Today, we are also following developments in the state of Oklahoma. In just a few weeks, Joseph Maldonado-Passage, better known as Joe Exotic or Tiger King, is expected to be back in court for resentencing. Now, earlier this year, you might recall a federal appellate court ruled that Joe Exotic should get a shorter prison sentence for his role in a murder-for-hire plot and for violating federal wildlife laws. So in January of 2020, he was sentenced to 22 years in prison. He filed an appeal, which said essentially that the murder-for-hire convictions should have been overturned. Now, the argument in part was that Carole Baskin was allowed to attend the whole trial, his arch nemesis, even though she was classified as a government witness and should have been sequestered. Now, the appeal also says that the murder-for-hire plots should not have been separated because they, quote, involved the same victim. So the panel of judges agreed, saying that the district court made an error by not grouping together those convictions at the time of sentencing. Let's take a look back together now at the case of the blonde, mullet, rockin' zookeeper known as Tiger King.
Tiger King. It's the #1 streaming program on Netflix.
Love me.
Most of the 7-part series focuses on the imprisoned Oklahoma zookeeper known as Joe Exotic.
Hey, I'm Joe Exotic, otherwise known as the Tiger King, the gay, gun-carrying redneck with a mullet.
I live here at the zoo with over 1,000 exotic animals, and I treat every one of them like they're my kin.
The staff saw firsthand what the conditions were like when they picked up the animals in late 2017.
The small enclosures, the indiscriminate breeding, the cub experiences, the exploitation. So all of that was very apparent when we were on the rescue.
He came up with the 410 in his hand, and I knew he just shot Cuddles. I heard it, and he come up the hill and goes, "Do Eric? If I knew it was going to be this easy, just walk right up to the cage. I'll go kill them all."
Joseph Maldonado-Passage, better known as Joe Exotic, stands accused in federal court Monday in a murder-for-hire plot. He was indicted on 2 counts in September. But it was years ago when federal prosecutors say he began posting threats on YouTube and Facebook, like this one.
You want to know why Carole Baskin better never, ever, ever see me face to face? Ever, ever, ever again.
Just because there's a difference between saying you want somebody dead and actually going to the lengths that he did on his show to shoot a blow-up doll, we never questioned that he wanted her dead.
Federal prosecutors say at the heart of the case, revenge. Carole Baskin, the owner of Big Cat Rescue in Florida, sued Maldonado-Passage in 2011 for trademark infringement. Maldonado-Passage was ultimately ordered to pay $1 million.
Carole Baskin, owner of Tampa's Big Cat Rescue, is also prominently featured.
Carole is the Mother Teresa of cats.
Including accusations that she killed her former husband, Don Lewis.
I never have ever heard of anyone that crafted a will that said, in my disappearance or kidnapping, leave my money, my entire sum of my fortune to this individual.
Baskin and her current husband, Howard, say they were duped by Tiger King's producers into thinking the series would be about stopping the abuse of big cats.
As far as I can tell, their only goal was to make something as inflammatory and salacious as possible so that Netflix would pay them millions for it.
They've also set up a webpage detailing what they say are the lies told in the Netflix documentary series.
They said the mound dirt was delivered on the 14th, which means that septic system was fully installed on the 14th or the 15th at the latest. And they told me if there was ever a time to dispose of a body in a septic system, that's the time to do it.
We have a very special guest joining us on the program today. We have Joe Exotic's attorney on the program. He's joining us from Jacksonville, Florida, where he practices civil rights work. Attorney John Phillips, a friend of Court TV. Always great to talk to you, John. And it's been a while since we talked. I think the last time I spoke to you on camera, and I know, of course, see what you're doing on social media and all that. It's great to stay in touch with you there. But you were representing Don Lewis's family. And I remember thinking, I wonder if you'll talk to Joe Exotic. I think we talked a little bit about that, and you were saying, yeah, I would be open to talking. So catch us up. How did this happen with you becoming his attorney?
It's been a crazy, it feels like we all watched Tiger King, the first version, 4 years ago. It was a year and a half. And so the first several months, so about August to October, I represented the family. Then they went in a different direction related to real estate. They're investigating Carole's real estate transactions. Ann McQueen, remember we filed a lawsuit. Ann McQueen's Don's assistant still involved with that lawsuit. We recently had a hearing about whether her defamation lawsuit should be dismissed for SLAP, strategic lawsuit against public participation. We expect to prevail on that and then move on to discovery. Come January of this year, 2021 now, Joe Exotic emailed not just once, but about 100 times and went through his case with me. And so as I say in Tiger King 2, I put on the hat in the sequel and say, I guess I've been traded. And so from about February or March of 2021 to present day, I've represented Joe Exotic. And, from the moment I walked into the Fort Worth Medical Center, the federal prison there in Dallas-Fort Worth area, and saw the tattooed eyeliner, and he still has the mullet, you saw the character Joe Exotic, but the man, Joseph Maldonado-Passage, is a real, like all of us, he's a real person. He's been locked up for 3 or 4 years. There was certainly government misconduct, ineffective assistance of counsel, and some new evidence. So over the course of the 9 months, we've met with Jeff Lowe and Lauren Lowe and Alan Glover and James Garrettson and John Rinke, all the characters people got to know in Tiger King 1, and they all, gave me a Lee Corso. Well, not so fast, right? So there was more to the story, and we've put together affidavits, filed them with the court, and even Alan Glover, the alleged hitman, admitted to perjury during the federal trial. So that's certainly a new development.
Oh, yes, John. These are big problems. Everything you mentioned. You mentioned government misconduct, new evidence, ineffective assistance of counsel. For those who are following this case, really interested and didn't get to see the trial play out because it was a federal case, we know cameras aren't allowed in federal court. So I know I myself am really curious about what happened. I think I've been trying to picture it in my mind. I know a lot of people have done the same. Can you give us kind of the Reader's Digest version of what happened and what you see as legally problematic for your client?
So, taking everybody back to 2017 and 2018 when this happened, nobody knew nor really cared who Joe Exotic was. He just ran a sleepy little sanctuary in Oklahoma that you had to try to get to. It wasn't even, off the beaten path. It was off of the beaten path. And so, there you go. There's GW Zoo. And so, Joe was an enemy to PETA and Carole Baskin. Joe had this show that he went on daily for hours daily, oftentimes, and recorded rants and raves and what was going on with the zoo, and also some positive stuff, some of his charity work. And within that, there were 5 or 6 clips where he took out his enemy. He threatened her. He did it as character Joe Exotic. And, there's a series of emails dating back to 2014, 2016, where Carole Baskin was emailing the federal agent that was involved here saying, we need to infiltrate Joe's park. What he's doing to the animals isn't right. And she was after him in every way possible. You've heard about the trademark lawsuit. These two were Hatfield and McCoys of the tiger industry. And they were, out to make each other look like the bad person. And ultimately the feds got involved. How the power that the United States government and the FBI and the Fish and Wildlife have. And so they just ran roughshod over Joe and his public defenders, starting with the animal charges and making him look like an animal abuser. And then within the same trial, which we thought was kind of bad form and unusual, but within the same trial, then got into the murder for hire plot, which the core was that Joe and this worker at the zoo, Alan Glover, had this bitter feud. Both wanted to get rid of each other, and Ultimately, it somehow resolved in Joe offering Alan Glover $3,000 to go kill his mortal enemy, which would be the most trustworthy thing you could do with somebody that you don't trust. But, Alan since admitted that he committed perjury related to that narrative, because at that point, Joe was vulnerable. Joe had become like the Walmart of the animal industry. He admits he bought and sold animals. He tried to stay within the confines of the federal law, but it was gray. And so they wanted Joe down. They took Joe down, and that takes the viewer kind of through Tiger King 1, where he got convicted with nobody really paying attention, with public defenders that and I respect public defenders all over the country, but that really didn't put up much of a fight here, and a judge that not only was on Joe's criminal case, but 2 of his civil cases with Carole Baskin. So, that was a little much for him to know all about Joe and have been, Joe didn't have good lawyers through any of this. And Carole did, and PETA did, and the United States government surely did. And so they convicted him. He sat in prison. His lawyers appealed, and the sentencing was vacated in, I believe, July of 2021, and we still wait the resentencing. It's supposed to be this month, or January.
Right, John. I wanted to ask you about that because he made news with an announcement about his prostate cancer treatments and wanting to delay them. Make sense of this for us, please.
Certainly. So, prostate cancer is something that Joe wants to educate the public about when he gets out. It affects so many men. They don't, men are not inclined to go get that test done. It's an uncomfortable test, I can tell you. But it's an important test. So Joe was diagnosed with prostate cancer mid to late 2021. He'd had a battle with it before. And crazily enough, as the story goes, the morning Tiger King 2 is set to air, November 17th, he's rushed on a private plane to a different facility, now moved to Butner Federal Medical Center in North Carolina, which is the more aggressive cancer treatment federal prison in the country. And he's kept in quarantine, kept in the SHU, finally sees a doctor who offers him 3 treatments: surgery, radiation, or just monitor it, because it was at a borderline level, and they pushed the radiation on him. Next thing we know, we get an email from the U.S. Attorney's Office saying that he had elected radiation and that they needed to postpone sentencing 6 to 8 weeks. We got a legal call with Joe and said, wait, what? And we got him some second opinions, including Dr. Drew Pinsky, Dr. Drew that we've all seen on TV for years.
Right.
Yeah.
Love Dr. Drew. Mm-hmm.
Great. And he's actually a survivor of prostate cancer as well. And so I sat on a call. One of my legal calls, we had Dr. Drew call in, and so it was Dr. Drew, me, and Joe Exotic. I was like, where's my life come that I'm moderating?
You're doing great things, John Phillips. No, you really are.
So I got to grow the beard back so people recognize me.
I recognized you when I saw Tiger King Part 2. And we want to talk to your kids. Don't, how funny. John, I'm being told we're going to squeeze in a break, but you're so kind to give us your time on this New Year's Eve. When we come back, lots more for you. Attorney John Phillips, we're going to continue the conversation about his client, Tiger King, Joe Exotic. It's next. Welcome back to Court TV, live on this special edition of programming on New Year's Eve. I'm your host, Julie Grant, and we have a very special guest on the program today, Joe Exotic's attorney, John Phillips. He practices in Jacksonville, Florida. He is no stranger to high-profile cases. He's a friend of Court TV. And, John, I have to say, I was so happy to see you in Tiger King Part 2. I was watching it with my fiancé, and as soon as you came on, he was saying, oh, do you know that attorney? And I said, yes, I do know that attorney. He's awesome. And It's John Phillips, and it was really great to see you and another person I know in that documentary. Our Vinnie Politan is in there. They used some Court TV clips in the doc, which is really great to see. But you've been very busy advocating for your client, and we talked a lot about the history, what happened before he found fame. He found fame in prison, and now what is he hoping for when he's resentenced?
You know, Vinny and I actually share the same birthday. He helped me get my start over 10 years ago in media, and I really appreciate it. You know, Joe just wants an end to this. He's waited 7 months on the resentencing. We're 3 years now because of how the criminal justice system slows things down for his Rule 33 motions and motions for ineffective assistance of counsel that really need to come right at or after resentencing. So he just wants people to understand what's going on. You know, he was prosecuted for improperly caging animals and has been in solitary confinement for over 150 days in the past year. I mean, the irony here of what's happened to him and the mistreatment of Joe Exotic with cancer, you know, getting justice delayed is justice denied, you know, is something that you know, even Molly Parmer, who's regular on Court TV, is helping us with the resentencing. And, you know, we want to expand this legal team and help Joe, you know, get a voice and get out, because, you know, 2022 is the year of the tiger starting February 1st. We're hoping it's the year that gets justice for Joe Exotic.
John, we want to play a clip for all of our viewers from that part 2 of the series where he's in prison and talking about what he's found for himself.
Go sit in a cage with your animal for a week. I mean, when I left the zoo and I sent my chimpanzees to the sanctuary in Florida, and imagine what my chimpanzees went through for 18 years, I'm ashamed of myself.
So he's found fame and then also really kind of found himself, done a lot of self-reflection, it seems. John, tell us, you know him better than most. What don't people know about Joe Exotic?
So Joe wrote a book in prison, plug.
No
and
kidding.
In it, he talks about, you know, his life as a former police officer and how he just wanted to help people and help animals. And certainly there's a point, if you're the person on the street that brings in so many strays that you have 100 strays, you know, at some point that person goes from, you know, heartfelt to maybe a burden on the system. And, you know, Joe did that with people. Joe did that with animals. And it did become too much. And, you know, America really has to ask about all of the people that surround themselves with big tigers, you know, why they need to do that. But Joe has a big heart. He's Uncle Joe to my kids. He spoke to them on Christmas Eve, and Christmas morning they opened up, you know, gift cards from Uncle Joe. And he's a sweet guy. What documentary filmmaking does sometimes is unfortunate. You know, everybody has way more of a 360-degree personality, and sometimes you only see what producers want you to see. But, you know, Joe's a good guy. Regardless, anybody deserves a full and fair treatment under the justice, full and fair. And so, you know, justice delayed, it's that Dr. King quote. I'll say it again. Justice delayed is justice denied. You know, 7 months waiting on a sentencing hearing, you know, all the time that it took for the appeal. You know, if America wants, you know, more of Tiger King or less of Tiger King, you know, the quickest way is to get Joe out and just be aware of what goes on in our criminal justice system. I as a former, you know, mainly civil guy, Molly Parmer has educated me heavily, as have some of the Innocence Project people on what's just going on with our inmates and our wrongfully convicted inmates. It's sad.
John Phillips, we could talk to you all day. We really could. And there's so much more legally that we know is ahead for your client. And so hopefully we can continue the conversation. I know you'll keep us posted on everything. Just want to say thank you so much for making time for us on this New Year's Eve. Happy New Year to you and your family, and every good wish with all of these cases you have coming up in 2022.
Thank you, Julie. Happy New Year to all the Court TV folk out there.
Thanks, John. Take care.